Hello, Dracut. Today is Wednesday, April the 6th, 2022. This is What's Happening, Dracut, and it's our 33rd episode, and now we have well over 2,038 followers on our Facebook page. That's quite a little accomplishment over the last 33 episodes. But good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to What's Happening, Dracut. We're here to inform you on what is happening in the Dracut area and the nation as we go forward and try to bring you information you will not hear from anywhere else. And we are broadcasting to you tonight live from our overly ostentatious studios here on Mill Street in Dracut, Massachusetts. I'm John Zimini. I'm your host for this evening. We're going to keep this conversation lively, interesting, and fast-paced. And hopefully will stimulate you enough for you to call in and join in the fun. There are several ways you can join us on our show tonight. You can call us by phone. We'll give you that number in a couple of minutes. We also are live streaming on Facebook. We have DATV. You can go to dracuttelevision.org and stream us live there. And we just have a plethora of information for you tonight. But before we get started, I'm going to introduce the hosts. And we got to welcome back one of our favorite hosts, the Teflon Don of Dracut, of What's Happening Dracut, is Gordy Scott. He's back in the house. Hi, Gordy.
Hey, John.
Teflon Don. Nobody attacks Gordy. Gordy could say some stuff, but nobody attacks him.
Well, that's good.
So how you feeling, Gordy?
I'm feeling much better, and I just want to send a big shout out to all the fans out there that have reached out on Facebook and email and telephone, text messages for well wishes. They were really heartfelt, and but I'm back. I'm alive. I made it through the surgery. So I'm going to find out Monday if I'm definitely cancer free. So hopefully, fingers crossed. I think everything's good, but I'm feeling great. Almost back to 100%. I got my stitches still in, so it's a little difficult to bend over and things like that still, but feeling great.
Yeah, you look good. You look good. So you had robotic surgery.
Robotic surgery, yep.
And to remove a cancerous prostate.
Yes, correct.
So now when your pathology comes back, they're going to tell you whether your margins are all clear and things of that nature, and whether or not you might have to go for further treatment.
Treatments, right.
Did they say what the further treatment might be?
No, not yet. I haven't got to that.
They're not going to worry you with that unless they have to, right?
Right.
Well, we're happy to have you back.
I'm happy to be back. I'm alive.
The fans, there's some fans that aren't so happy that you're back, but for most of the part, you're the Teflon Don.
And I do want to say a big thanks to my wife because she did put up with a lot. She took great care of me. So I know she's watching right now. So, honey, love you very much. Thank you for all the help that you gave me over the past 10 days.
What would we do without them?
Oh,
what's that saying? Can't live with them, can't live
without
them,
right? She's great.
Yep.
So I can't say enough about her. She did a great job.
That's great. And the Cub reporter is here tonight. He missed us last week because he had more important stuff to do.
Wow.
He's now an important guy. He's on a couple of committees. So we got our Cub reporter, Richard Silvio.
Absolutely. Hey, John. Hi, Gordy. How's it going?
Good.
You know, Gordy, I think now's a good time to announce your campaign for selectman.
Ooh.
Things are going good. I think it's time.
I'll do that as soon as I get some food from What's Cooking Dracut.
Oh, that's coming.
Wow.
That's coming. That's coming.
No, I've been good, John. The committees you mentioned, I'm on the Dracut Historical Society now. We're open Sundays 1 to 3, by the way, so come on down. It's completely free. Have a good time. In the Dracut Land Trust as well. And it's been fun, and I'm glad to help out in the community and do what I can.
If you're in Dracut and you want to find out a little bit about the history of Dracut and some of the stuff that went on here, the Historical Society, the building down there next to Harmony Hall,
absolutely, yep.
is a museum. It's beautiful. It's excellent to go in
there. It's absolutely beautiful. And actually, we just brought up from the basement a 1951 Philco television set that we found.
That was awesome. I saw the picture.
Did you? Almost pristine condition. It doesn't work, obviously, but
I had somebody ask me, is he really watching that TV? Because you had a picture posted on Facebook, right?
I did, yeah. If I could, I would, trust me.
I know you would. I know you would. But I don't know.
That is pretty neat, though. You don't see many of those anymore.
No, you don't. Apparently, it's a rare set, too. So, come check it out.
So listen, if you want to reach us and ask us some questions, you can call us But you can also email us at what'shappeningdracut@gmail.com. But you can call us at 978-957-4243 and join in the fun. We ask you to just please keep it clean because we don't want accidentally things to go over the air because we are a live show and there isn't somebody on a button waiting to blank you out. So keep it all clean if you can. We have a lively show here tonight. But before we get started with the show, we wanted to bring in our resident weatherman who's watching, if I'm not mistaken, he's watching live right now. Our resident weatherman, and he's in the other studio. Ready, Sean? Weatherman Sean Kelly from Mill City Weather. Take it away, Sean.
Hi, John. Thanks for having me on once again. Here's the forecast for tonight. For us back in Dracut, 42 degrees for a low temp tonight with rainy conditions, and it will be heavy later on in the evening hours and into the overnight hours as the rain progresses and gets a little bit stronger into the overnight hours. And then as we head into Thursday, high temps near 50 degrees, 48 degrees for a high temp. So we're going to be struggling to get near 50 degrees as we head through the day on Thursday. And then as we head into Thursday night, temps are going to be pretty much near the same, 46 degrees. So we're not going to drop it down too much as we head into the overnight hours. But again, temps are going to be in the 40s, so pretty much average for this time of year for an overnight low temp. And here's a look at your exclusive 8-day forecast. So again, the rainy pattern sets up until the weekend, at least until Saturday right now. And then Sunday looks like it's going to be dry, maybe a few clouds later on in the afternoon hours. But other than that, it does look dry as we have high temps near 60 degrees. And then next week, we're really going to start to warm it up. High temps near 70 degrees as we head into next Wednesday. And that's the forecast for now, everyone. Back to you guys in the studio.
Sean Kelly, you are the best. Thank you very much.
Are we blessed to have him on this show?
We are.
It's great.
We
It's
are. We are blessed to have him on the show. And he's came to Dracut Access Television because of Phil Thibault. Did you know that?
No, I did not know that.
Phil Thibault brought him over. He found him in Mill City out there in Lowell, and he was kind of thrown to the wolves by the LTC, I think. That's how the story is. We'll have to ask Phil when he gets on here later on tonight. Of course, I don't want to take away from his time when he's here. But he brought him into, that's one of the good things that Phil Thibault did.
I find he's more accurate than the big stations.
Oh, fantastic. Whenever there's a snowstorm at the schools, I always message him the night before saying, is there going to be school tomorrow? Over 2 years, he's never been wrong.
Yeah, and he's working for Channel 7, and he was working for Ace Hardware in Lowell, and they recently have gone out of business, so I'm sure that he's really hunting down a full-time job.
Hopefully
at one of the stations.
I hope he gets a weather job somewhere.
Someone
should get him out, collect him up before he gets another job.
He's very good at what he does, and I mean he studies all the necessary different computer models and comes up with great forecasts, and they're usually right on.
Yep.
But tonight we're going to move on to our next subject. We've got a special interview that I taped yesterday with. Was it yesterday or the day before? But I forget which day it was. But we taped it with Josh Taylor, who came into the studio. He's got a prior commitment, but he was gracious enough to come in and tape a segment with us. But before we get into that, we just want to talk a little bit about the candidates that are running for selectmen. And some of the candidates, obviously, is Josh Taylor. He's a newcomer. He's been around town for his entire life. He's a Dracut guy. He's one of these guys that gets around. You don't even really realize, but he gets around a lot, and he's out there, and people are watching what he does. He's a chairman of the Conservation Commission, I believe. He was the president of the Gun Club, and he's an all-around good guy, as far as I can tell. Then you have Matt Sheehan, by the way, who has refused to come on our show. He's basically graciously tried to beg out, but I have some news on him later on. He is the lucky candidate, or maybe not. There's a little rumor around it. He may not be the lucky candidate. Then you have incumbent Tony Chinsky. He's the prohibitive favorite to win the race. He's got a party tomorrow night, I believe, at Patty's Ale House. And it's more of a meet and greet type thing for everybody to come to. And I think that's from 7 to 9, if I'm not mistaken. But if you really want to find out, go to his website. And if my computer guy had his computer here today, then
Just getting back. It
Oh, I got to
takes
point
me,
the other way. Oh, that way.
takes me a little while to get back into
if he had it, we would bring it up on the site here. And then we have Phil Thibault, who's an outstanding community activist and been involved for many, many years with Dracut and all kinds of committees as he's on. We'll get into that with him. He's here for his segment. And then we have Jennifer Kopaczynski, who has skirted us. She's playing ping pong with me. And I don't like to be led around by the nose. I'd rather them just tell me that they don't want to come. Like Matt Sheehan at least has told you, Rich, that thank you, but no thank you. And we sent him to tell him we could tape a segment.
Yeah,
He
so
said he was busy?
I had emailed him, inviting him on the show. He said he was busy that evening, so I responded a day or so later, offering to tape it for him, and he never got back to me.
Are you
so-
surprised?
No.
Of course not.
No.
Of course not. So without further ado, let's run that interview with Josh Taylor. We'll be back in 20 minutes. Hi, folks. We're here with Josh Taylor, candidate for Dracut Selectman. He was gracious enough to be able to come into the studio to pre-record his spot because he's busy on the night of our show. So we are actually taping this the day before the show. So welcome to the show.
Thank you, John. Thank you for pre-recording. As I'm the chair of Conservation Commission in Dracut, and I didn't feel it would be appropriate to leave a meeting to come in and record. So I appreciate the willingness to pre-record for it.
Oh, absolutely. So, Josh, you're a candidate for Dracut Selectman.
That is correct.
And why don't you look into that camera and tell the folks who you are and why you decided you could run.
So I'm Josh Taylor. I've lived in Dracut for my entire life, for the past 40 years. Primarily, I don't really do much with politics. I was the president of the Centerville Sportsman's Club for 6 years, on the board of directors for 10. In doing so, got to know some of the town management years past, and was asked to get on a conservation commission around 2018 or so, and from there got on to community preservation, and most recently on the Beaverbrook Farm ad hoc. And from sitting on the town committees, I've realized that there's a lack of communication, in my opinion, through town boards, through town administration, and I just felt that I would be better suited to run for a seat on the selectmen and see if I can help address some of these issues in moving Dracut forward. It's basically the gist of the why.
That's great. Is there a number, other than that one thing you just mentioned,
Yeah.
was there another driving force to make you run?
Well, I've always, my entire adult life, I've been community oriented. I've been trying to give back to the community. I mean, the number one force, the driving factor was, to me, the communication. I mean, public safety to me is very important. I happen to have the endorsement from Dracut Police and from the Dracut's DPW, along with Union 1404. And a lot of that encompasses around public safety. And that's important, but I don't have a typical platform like a typical politician would. I'm doing this for me. I'm not doing this for, I'm not being pushed by anybody, by any parties, by anybody else. I'm an unregistered voter. I don't believe in following political party lines. I've never have, and I won't. I'm doing it for the residents of this town, for myself, for my family, for my son, to try to better Dracut is my driving force.
So when you got the endorsements,
Yeah.
you got the endorsement of the police department, I believe?
Correct. Yep.
So how was that experience going before the police officers and talking?
It was good. Well, I've talked to many of the officers in Dracut before from my past, workings with the Sportsman's Club. So to sit with them and talk with them was no big deal. It's no different than talking to you or to the people at home. But I went into their union meeting and expressed why I want to run, and they were gracious enough to offer the endorsement because of it. And as I left that meeting, I happened to think, public safety, it's very important. And I said, geez, my entire adult life, I can never remember somebody approaching the DPW, or not approaching, but hearing about a DPW endorsement. So I happened to go over to the town barn during one of their lunch breaks and asked them, I said, hey, do you guys endorse? And what's the story with that? And they said, well, nobody's asked us that we can remember. So I talked to them and I asked them, and they endorsed me. And then they invited me to their local 1404 meeting, which encompasses the school administration, the cafeteria workers, the school custodial, and the DPW. And through that meeting, I talked to everybody at that meeting, and they voted at that meeting to endorse as a union as full. So that's kind of how that led off. It's communication. I just reach out and talk to people.
Right. Which is a good thing. I've been involved in Dracut politics for many, many years here, and I never even thought that they would give an endorsement, so nobody really approached them. But that was a very good proactive thing.
They're just as important for public safety. I mean, the
Thinking
fire
out-
and police can't get to the door to help you if the roads get a foot of snow on them.
Yeah.
I mean, these guys deserve the credit for it, and I saw that, and I went and talked to them about it.
Certainly thinking outside of the box.
Well-
when you're talking about being different politically in town.
Yeah.
You mentioned the police, and later on I had some questions about police, but we can jump to that right now. And everyone knows that the police and fire department are dangerously low staffing levels.
Correct.
What's the one thing you would do to try to increase both of those departments' staffing? I mean the on-street staffing, not necessarily administration.
Well, the boots on the ground is where they need the support. They need more guys on the ground. Both departments do. Before we can address that, we have to take really good looks at town budget, where the money's going and what's coming in, and really analyze that, because we need more fire, we need more police officers on the street, but we have to make sure we have the funding to pay them. And that needs to be looked at first, not just through the Board of Selectmen, but the entire Finance Committee, and everybody involved needs to look at it and report back, and we all have to have a good discussion on it.
With well over $10 million in free cash, as you know,
Yep.
and a lot more money in the what's the other fund that there's, the departmental funds where I can't remember the name of it now. Stabilization fund.
Yeah.
There's money in the stabilization fund. That's mostly for equipment and stuff. But with well over $10 million in free cash, it would, in my opinion, it would behoove somebody to go and make a motion like I did when I was on the Board of Selectmen to increase those two departments by 6 members each. And we did it. We asked the manager to do it. He did it. But now it's below the number that we had at that time.
Yep, it is.
And that's 15 years ago.
It's a very valid point, but that free cash that we have, a lot of that could have to do with grants and things that came through all of this COVID tragedy that we're hopefully over with. I mean,
This
it's not
is separate from the COVID.
well.
The free cash is separate.
It's separate.
That's certified
but
by
the budget that we have and what we have available. I mean, we can't just go spend it just because it's there. We have to take a good look at it and we have to analyze it. So before that can be done, I mean, I wouldn't feel comfortable going to make a motion to increase by 6 until we make sure the funding is there to sustain the increase by 6.
Right.
Because once you use up that free cash, you've got to replace it.
Right. So the police chief is currently out, I believe, on an injury, surgery or something. Oh, he's going out. I've read that, or we saw that in the paper.
Yeah.
What if he doesn't return? How do you think the process to pick a new police chief should be handled?
Well, how do I think the process should be handled? It should be investigated fully, and it should be discussed for everybody that needs to. And I don't think it'd be a bad thing if that
Current chief
process
is
does
under a
happen.
contract through civil service.
Yeah,
He was originally from New Hampshire,
I know that.
and he came down here, and I don't have any qualms about how he's doing, because I'm not that intimately involved in it as I used to be. But and that's not what I'm asking. I'm asking, do you think that there should be a nationwide search, or should there be just an internal search, or how do you think it should be handled then?
Well, personally, I think that promoting from within the department is, a good thing for morale of the officers, and I think that all the officers involved should be able to weigh in to an extent on what it is. And I understand there's procedures in place for it, but personal feeling on it is that within is a good thing. And there's past officers that may have retired that may come back to service that would be very well fit to serve that job and do it well.
There are several lawsuits in both departments facing the community. I don't know if you're aware of mine.
Well, I'm aware of some of them. I haven't looked into any of them. I haven't gone digging into it. Provided that I get the chance to do so, I most certainly would.
Right.
But there's lots of things that happen in a lot of boards that communication is the main issue. There can be a lot more discussion before votes and actions are taken.
Right.
So I'm not going to comment on any ongoing lawsuits because I haven't had a chance to talk to anyone involved or town council or anything else, so.
Right. So you talked about endorsements, right?
Yep.
From groups. What about from political figures within town or former office holders? Do you have any specific or
No.
current office holders that are specifically out there campaigning for you or
I do
endorsing you?
not. I have not asked any of them, and I do not have any political ties to anybody in town. And
Which is a good thing.
I plan to keep it that way. I mean, I support public safety. I support the guys on the ground, the police, the fire, the DPW. So to go after those endorsements doesn't bother me. But to go out and talk to people that have been in town politics before and try to get them to side or back me or whatever. I mean, I'll talk to anybody in town at any point, but I won't specifically ask anybody for that.
No. So what life experiences do you possess that you believe you can apply to the job if you are elected?
Life experiences, well, the town has multiple boards, right? There's not just selectmen, you know, and all these questions that come up, there's other boards that report too. And life experiences, you know, on a much smaller scale, obviously, but being a president of a sportsman's club for a decade has a lot of meeting experience, a lot of running meetings, a lot of dealing with insurance companies, a lot of dealing with public that's not too happy that you are there doing what you're doing. So to look at all of that, the main thing, again, is my goal is to get everybody on the board to ask questions. You know, as I sit as chair of conservation, when something comes up, I look at each one of my members and I ask them for their input. Because you have people that sit on boards that don't give input, that will just vote when the time comes.
Or not even show up for meetings
Well,
until they...
I'm not touching that one, but I know what you mean.
Yeah, yeah.
But the main thing is, like, my whole thing is when something comes up, even something small, members that are elected represent the general public. Okay, that's what we're there for. So we have to make sure that we ask every question that we think is appropriate, every question that we think the general public would like us to ask, and weigh in on all those answers.
So,
And diversity is good. I mean, you don't have to have everybody on a board that is perfect with a board. You need to have different opinions, and you need to have people that think outside the box, people that are not afraid to look at things, people that aren't afraid to speak their mind and ask the right questions and wait for the right answers to move forward.
and not have a political agenda of their own.
Well, that's an important
Which
part.
is what we have now. We have
Yeah.
some members there that are just have a political agenda, and that's what they do. But that's not for you to answer.
No, I wouldn't answer that one anyways, John.
I'm just, I wanted to throw this out. What do you perceive the job is of a selectman?
What do I perceive it is?
What is your job as a selectman?
Well, your job is the same thing as everybody that comes in front of you, whether it's a business coming for a license, whether it's a resident coming for a complaint, whether it's a legal issue, anything. Your job is to represent the members of the town, represent the businesses, and analyze everything, talk to all the other boards that are involved, and make sure everything is where it should be before you vote on an action. You know, it's not just 2 meetings a month. It's not just that. I mean, there's things that have to get looked at. There's plans that have to get reviewed. There's packets of information that should be read before meetings. So when you get to a meeting, you're not trying to ask questions to find out you can't ask them at that point.
How do you think the manager's doing right now, the town manager?
I think the manager overall is doing a good job. I mean, again, as I said, there's room for improvement in communication. Everybody, doesn't matter which job you're doing, there's room for improvement. Overall, I think Ann's doing a great job. She was given a disorder when she took over, and to take it from that to where it is, she deserves the credit for that.
You realize that's the number one job you'll have,
Yeah.
is managing the manager.
Correct.
Not the other way around. The manager doesn't manage the
No,
board.
I fully understand that, and it's not my job, it's the board as a whole's job to talk out everything and communicate amongst the entire board. And you give me your ideas, I give you mine, and we all work together on it. It shouldn't be any one person, any one agenda's ideas. That's the main thing is.
Of course, the day-to-day operation of the town is charged to the manager. So,
Correct.
do you feel that a member of the board should have input on day-to-day operation, or should it be a big picture thing where you set policy?
Well, it's more of a big picture thing. I mean, if there's day-to-day operations, there's questions and there's input that's wanted, then absolutely. That's a manager's discretion if she's looking for input on that. She's hired to fit that job.
Right, right. So, do you think the members of the board should just rubber stamp everything that the
Absolutely
manager
not.
does? There is a
No.
candidate in there that,
No,
that
absolutely
has
not.
publicly said that they
No.
just want to support everything she's doing.
Absolutely not. I'd be 100% against that.
As you said earlier, and I'm not trying to put things in your mouth, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, you said that, differing opinions is what makes things better.
Diversity on a board is what makes a board. If
Exactly.
everybody had the same idea and you're going to rubber stamp it, why have a board of selectmen? Just have one person sitting there. That's not the way it should be.
What's the stipend for the Board of Selectmen?
Honestly, I think last I saw it was around $2,000 annually, but I will not be taking that stipend.
Okay, that's interesting.
So
I didn't take it for
Yeah,
almost 2 terms.
I'm not taking any campaign donations at all. I'm not taking any stipend. I'm not doing this for any financial reasons other than I want to help our community and I want to move it forward.
So you were once a campaign manager.
I was once a campaign manager, yeah.
Right. Now, do you have a campaign manager now?
No, I am single only. I am not having any campaign.
No committee?
No committee at all. In fact, I've had multiple phone calls with OCF trying to figure this out, and with Jason, with some of their attorneys, and they still haven't gotten me some real answers as of yet as to how to list my campaign finances, because
You're self-financing.
I'm self-financing, but I'm doing things a little bit different, and they don't know if I have to include certain things or usage of things. So working with them now to try to get all that in line so that everybody's on the same page.
Okay. Where do you stand on raising taxes?
Well, I'm a resident of town. I wouldn't want to see taxes raised. Obviously, I pay them, but where do I stand on it? Inevitably, at some point, taxes will go up a bit. It's
Well, through
Nobody-
2.5, that happens automatically.
Nobody wants to hear that. Nobody wants to talk about raising taxes, and I'm certainly not going to sit here and lie to people and say, hey, we'll never raise taxes. What I can tell you is I want to look at where the money that we are spending now is being spent and take a good look at that and look at what we have going on and what we need to do in the next 5-10 years. There's nothing that can be done in one term to solve any of these problems.
How
But
about schools? Where do you stand with schools?
where do I stand with
Yeah,
the
how do you
schools?
feel, how important are schools to the community?
Well, schools are very important in the community. I've said for a while on different meetings on CPC, I've said that we needed to get rid of the Greenmont and the Campbell and build a new school facility. I've said that for a while.
So you're fully in favor of that process?
Well, think of it this way, right? We're talking about funding and everything. It's a big capital improvement, agreed. But the buildings are outdated, they're inadequate. The cost to maintain them, the cost to heat them, cool them, to make them comfortable for people to be productive. If you look into all that and really get into the information and analyze that completely, it's not as expensive as it seems if you look at 5-10 years down the road of what it is.
Normally, we have to do an override, a debt exclusion override. I'm not asking you to commit one way or the other, but would you favor a debt exclusion type thing to pay for the portion that the town's going to have to pay?
As you and I spoke about this previously when we had a small conversation, as we stand right now, no, I would not support a debt exclusion.
Right.
There's so many things that can be done. Like I said to you previously, a grant writer in town. If we can find a fit in our budget for a grant writer, if it's $80,000 a year, let's just say, as a rough figure, it's just a number I'm throwing out. But one good grant to pay that person's salary. 2 good grants and you're ahead of the game. There's money available for projects like the schools, for projects like the road repairs. So if that's in place, if the town sells off the administration building, if the town sells off the Greenmont and the Campbell, and we have a new piece of land to build a new school, and everything lines up, and we've looked at the budget and we've analyzed everything, and there's a debt exclusion and it has to be there to make it happen, then I may vote in favor to recommend it. But again, the Board of Selectmen don't approve a debt exclusion.
No,
We have the opportunity to have the town residents vote on that at a town meeting, and then it goes for a ballot question for every voter.
Imagine,
So-
we're almost done already.
Yeah.
20 minutes went by pretty quick. I
Yeah,
just
it
want
went
a
by
couple more
quick.
questions I want to ask you.
Yeah, sure.
Fees. Now, we have been for years, hundreds of years, cities and towns have been collecting
Yep.
rubbish for the taxpayers.
Yeah.
And that's become expected, an
Yep.
expected thing. How do you feel about trash collections, fees?
I don't support a fee for it. It's part of the basic taxes, and we need to work on how to get it into the budget, is my opinion.
Stormwater fees?
Again,
That's been a big issue.
It has been, and that was kind of pushed so that it was government mandated, and I haven't fully looked into it. I don't personally think I would support a fee for it, but I have to look at the entire budget as a whole.
Government mandated on this town to provide for
Yeah.
stormwater management, but
Yeah.
it's not governmentally
Correct.
mandated to charge a fee. They should work.
No,
within the budget.
I agree with that, but until I've had a chance to look at and
Right.
analyze that budget, that question, you have to figure out where the money's going to come from. One way or another, it's going to come from our pockets as residents. We have to see where and how.
Josh, this has been a great conversation between
I
the two of
appreciate
us. And is there anything that we missed that you might want to add, or something you might want to that you were thinking about coming in here and talking about?
Well, if anybody wants to reach out to me, can I mention the website?
You can look into
All
that
right.
camera and make your pitch.
So I created a website called votedracut.com. On that website, there's information if you want to get a hold of me. If you want to call me on the phone, my phone number is listed right on it. You can do that. There'll be a bus going around on voting day that I funded out of my own pocket. And if anybody needs a ride to the polls and can't get there, you call and a bus will pick you up. A bright green bus will pick you up and bring you to the polls, because voter turnout is very important.
Which, if you could see, if you can get the wide shot here, that's one of his vehicles. He's got several.
I've got
out there.
several. I've got several. So there's a whole little fleet of little smart cars that'll be running around. I'm in the middle of finishing painting those now. The sign truck is out. The bus is just about ready to be finished up. And then there's something else in the works that isn't quite ready just yet.
Make a last pitch to the voters on that camera.
It's
November
the last pitch is follow my journey. I'm not going to sit here right now and ask you to vote for me. I'm going to ask you to follow and make an educated decision for the best interest of Dracut when the 7th comes.
May 7th, folks, and thank you, Josh, for coming in.
No problem. Thank you for
That
having
was
me.
simple.
It was
huh?
simple.
Yes.
Yep.
Back on, John.
Hey, we're back. We're trying to figure out here what's happening with Facebook. We keep losing the connection, keep going back and forth. Are we live
We're
right
back
now?
on, yep.
So, folks, that was our little interview with Josh Taylor. I hope it was enlightening to you as it was to us, and to me in particular. It's going to be an interesting race. But now we're going to move on to our second interview of the evening, who's sitting here live. He's one of our co-hosts occasionally here, most of the time. And now that he's running, we're going to push him off a little bit and let him do his thing. But we have with us tonight candidate for selectman, Phil Thibault. You're in the house, Phil. How are you?
Very well. Yourself?
Good. Why don't you tell the folks about you? Because I've talked about you so much. I'm tired of talking.
Phil Thibault, running for selectman. I've been a resident of Dracut for the past 58 years so far. As has been said before, I'm very active. I currently serve on the Permanent Building Committee, where I've served for the last, I think, 18 years.
Wow.
I'm also a counselor for NEMCOG, Northern Middlesex Council of Governments, and I believe that's also about 18 years or so. And NEMCOG is a regional planning organization. Prior to that, I was on the planning board for about 14 years, 7 of which I served as the chair. I've been on capital planning. I'm sure there's a few more in there that don't come to
Zoning?
mind.
Were you on zoning?
No, I was never on zoning,
Zoning?
though I'm very familiar with the
You're
zoning
on the land
requirements.
trust?
Just recently, along with Richard, I was asked to be on the Dracut Land Trust, and I think that fits into another aspect of certainly my career as an architect and planning, and that I think not only are the buildings, which are seen as the plaza spaces, that the empty spaces or the open spaces are very important to have also. So I'm very interested in that within Dracut. I'm seeking your vote for selectmen. There are 2 seats up.
Oh, you're asking for somebody's vote?
I am asking for your vote. The only way I can become selectman is through the generosity of your vote, and so I respectfully ask for it. I have dedicated, as you know, the past 20-plus years to Dracut in some sort of service, private and public. As you know, I'm on the Dracut television board of directors.
Oh, you're still on that board?
I am.
We'll get into
I
that
am.
discussion in a little bit.
Where I served as president for 3-ish years. There
Yeah.
was kind of an off and on. There was a tumultuous, if you want to call it that. But
Yeah.
I think I helped steer the boat clear as I could and keep everything on track in DATV. And they do a fantastic job here. So,
Most certainly.
yeah,
So let's talk a little bit about endorsements. Have you sought and received any endorsements as of yet?
So actually this evening, I'm going to go see the firefighters at their union meeting and certainly ask for their endorsement. I was lucky enough to receive their endorsement last year in last year's election.
And that was against Joe DeRocco.
And that was against Joe DeRocco, a former firefighter and former fire chief. And I have to admit, when at that particular meeting, the firefighters surprised me because, of course, you try. Oftentimes, you're messaging towards the group that you're speaking in front of, and of course, firefighters and the unions. And it was refreshing. A firefighter stopped me and said, "That's all well and fine, Phil. We know what you've done for the firefighters, and what are you going to do for the town?" And they specifically wanted to know what items I wanted to try to accomplish at the town level. And so I said, try to stop me, as you know.
Yeah.
Here's a list. These are the things that way I want to try to accomplish.
So what's your number one priority if you're elected?
It would have to be, at this point, public participation in government. Over the past year, maybe even 2 years, it seems that public participation in government is frowned upon. I mean, you look at some of the recent goings on, especially with the Board of Selectmen through the chair, that they want to see your resume and for you to volunteer for items. So they want to qualify you. As far as I'm concerned, the only qualification you really need to serve on a board, especially for volunteer service, is that you're a resident in Dracut and you're a registered voter, essentially. And to be honest, I'm not necessarily sure you need to be a registered voter.
I don't
No,
think you do.
you don't.
I don't think you do.
So you can. So I want to try to get as much public participation as possible. When I served on the master plan committee, which I chaired, we really made an effort to get public participation, even to the point with the schools. I mean, this is something that had never been asked before, and I kind of surprised even our consultant. I said, with Allison Volpe, I said, can we get a survey into the school system so we can get seniors and I think juniors, get their opinions on what they want to see in town? Because if we want to retain these kids, we have to know what they're looking for.
Right. Go ahead, Gordy. You have a question for Phil?
Sure, Phil. What I wanted to ask you is, as you know, if you ever watch one of the selectmen's meetings, it seems like if you're looking at the TV, the left side of the table seems to lean one way, and the right side of the table seems to lean another way. So if you were lucky enough to become one of the selectmen, where do you think your seat will be, and how are you going to try to bring the group of all those selectmen together?
I've always been one that, as my role as an architect, I often have a lot of competing interests. Engineers, plumbing engineers want one thing, HVAC engineers want something, electrical engineers want something, fire protection engineers want another thing. So it's a matter of sometimes herding cats. And to be honest, with the Board of Selectmen, it can oftentimes be herding cats. So you try to keep the conversation at a civil level. You try to get everybody to speak their mind in a civil manner. Other than that, I mean, oftentimes when I'm discussing a project, and a lot of stuff relates back to that because it's all common sense as far as I'm concerned. in my office, I'll bring everybody in. It doesn't matter at what level they are. They can be an architect, they can be a draftsman, they can just be brand new to the firm. And I bring them in for a design charrette, and I said, you can throw out any idea you want. There's only one thing I typically ask, is that you be able to support your idea with 2 independent reasons. So, if you're putting a cornice on a building, you need 2 reasons for it. One might be a shadow line. I said, and my caveat is that because I like it is not a reason. That's an opinion. Mm-hmm. So that's probably the same tact I would take with the Board of Selectmen, is try to drill down into, okay, you've made a statement. What are your reasons? Not what are your opinions, but what are your reasons? When I was on the planning board, I would often say to the rest of the members, I'm thinking one way, change my mind. Give me reasons why I should change my mind. And so often you don't see that. It's purely an opinion on why I want to vote a particular way.
And the reason, just to follow up, the reason I asked you that specific question is because I think you can do that job. And I think we need someone in there that can do that job, because if you ever watch, I know a lot of the people out there don't watch the selectmen's meeting, but if you ever do watch it for 5 minutes, you can definitely see the left side of the table is under one agenda and the right side of the table is on another agenda, and it's like pounding heads together, and the left side right now controls the power.
Yeah. We're going to get into that in a minute. Richard, do you have a question?
Yeah, we actually have 2 questions from the Facebook chat.
Right.
Angel wants to know the type of town government we have. Do you think that needs to be changed? Do you think it's running efficiently? What do you think should be done about that?
Well, that drills down to, I suppose, a much larger question, and that's the town charter. Now, the town charter was, the last full review was done in 1985-ish, or maybe a couple of years after that. And typically, town charters should be reviewed every 10 to 15 years at the most, and that's a full charter review. So we haven't had that.
Well, the current administration doesn't want charter.
Absolutely. So I mean, there's a lot of things in there that could be investigated. Certainly, if we want to remain a town, we have town meeting, open town meeting right now. Do you want to remain as an open town meeting, which all the voters can go, or is it a representative town meeting where, much like Chelmsford, I suppose in Dracut's case, because we have 9 precincts, that maybe you have 20 individuals from each precinct, so you would have 180 representatives at town meeting, and they vote for everything. Typically, it's open to the public so they can hear what's going on, but the ultimate vote is taken care of by the representatives. We could go to a town council, which may get rid of town meeting altogether, so they vote on the budget, zoning issues that may come up. So at town meeting, we take care of zoning issues, typically in the fall meeting. So that would be taken care of possibly by a town council. That could speed up any particular changes that may be needed, whereas if you're looking for a zoning change, you would typically have that done every 6 months or so. You could actually have that reviewed. But with a council, you could, at a posted meeting, so within a month or so, you can be looking at a zoning change, if it needs to be done.
You have a second question?
Yeah, Steve Plant in the Facebook comments asks, Phil, would you vote to have the Campbell School renovation and addition be bonded and paid for out of operating budgets, similar to what Tingsboro has done?
Well, Tingsboro didn't vote for the full amount, and I think that would be very difficult for Dracut to do. I think Tingsboro voted $1 million every year for the next 10 years, so it amounts to about $10 million, I believe. I suspect the Campbell-Greenmont School combination may run towards $120 million, maybe wow. More. So that would be difficult to certainly bond out of budget, and that would really put a strain. So the route probably, and probably rightfully, would go to a debt exclusion.
Right.
That would have to be voted on at town meeting to put it out, and then it would have to be voted by the entire town at an election.
Right. And a debt exclusion, for everyone's information, is where you are paying for a specific bonded item. It's not, as opposed to an operational override, which is permanent. These are not permanent. Once the bond is gone, the debt exclusion is gone.
So,
in theory,
in theory, for people our age, John,
Yeah,
We
we're
might
never
as
gonna
well,
see it.
we might as well look at it as the permanent increase. I
Right.
mean, because it's a 20-year.
Right.
But at this point, I think the MSBA is looking at reimbursing Dracut about 40%.
At 40%?
Yeah.
That's low.
Oh, so, no, excuse me,
60%.
60%.
So
So
our
Dracut would
share-
be, Dracut would be.
Around 40.
Would be 40% of that.
So we're talking bonding about
48
$48 million,
Yeah.
which is
Yeah.
a big chunk.
It's a big chunk. It's 2 schools, so 800 plus students. You know, you have to find land. So the first step, of course, there is a feasibility study, and at the Springtown meeting, we'll probably have an expenditure through free cash to fund the feasibility study.
So you pretty much hit on some of the items that we've asked other candidates, but what do you think, in a short answer now, Phil, because we're running out of time, what do you think or perceive the job of selectman is, and how do you relate that to what your interaction and job of managing the manager?
So the job of a selectman is real. There are regulatory portions for special permits and stuff
Right.
like that, and that's much like the planning board or
Liquor
ZBA.
licenses and things like that.
Correct. So that's regulatory. Apart from that, the job of the Board of Selectmen is really the board of directors of a corporation. The town of Dracut is essentially an $85 million corporation. That's what the budget is. So it's a matter of doing the big pictures, managing the manager, but certainly not micromanaging the manager. You know, giving her the support that's needed for the manager to do the
So
job.
a candidate who is in your race, one of the 5, was on a Lowell talk show, and he specifically repeated numerous times, and I'm talking specifically about Matt Sheehan, he repeated numerous times that he wants to continue the direction that the town is going in currently, and he wants to do everything in his power to support anything that the manager's program provides. How do you feel about being a rubber stamp?
Well,
for the manager?
I would, at that point, I would feel who's working for who at that point. I mean, the job is certainly to oversee the town manager, give them the support that they need to essentially fulfill the wishes of and the policies that are set up by the board of directors or the board of selectmen. So certainly the support needs to be there, but it's to support essentially the agenda and that the board of selectmen set up for the town.
Back to taxes for a minute, because there was another question from Steve Plant about taxes. And I wanted to ask this because we asked Josh Taylor this, and we'd ask every candidate this. How do you feel about raising taxes, in specifically terms of stormwater fee and trash collection? Just a simple answer.
Yeah, stormwater fee and trash should and under my watch will remain within the budget. And certainly raising taxes, I mean, taxes have the ability to increase 2.5% every year, but maybe the Board of Selectmen, rather than just rubber stamping, as you indicated previously, rubber stamping a budget that increases the 2.5%. Let's take a look at it. Let's ask the manager, could you give us a budget that is a 1% increase, a 2% increase, or maybe no increase, a 1% and a 2.5%. So we can make some determinations on how we think we should be proceeding.
So I want to talk about the elephant in the room, about a hit piece that was put on you through the Valley Patriot a couple of weeks ago from the infamous mudslinger. And I'll say these things so that you don't have to get into it. But the mudslinger whose wife is the chairman of the board, who went on the Board of Selectmen saying that she was going to be, this is Allison Janess, that she was going to be one of those people that try to unite the town and unite the board and not be part of any groups. And the minute she was elected, she immediately matriculated to the left side of the table that you talked about.
Right.
And now, since then, those 3 members, Joe DeRocco, Janess, and Jesse Forcia, have been jamming things through without much debate because they have the votes. So I wanted to ask you about what did you think about that hit piece that was in the paper? Because there's out there people talking about it, and they wanted to know. I had several calls about whether or not you're going to respond to it, and so I'm going to give you a little opportunity to respond to it.
It's all tripe, but that's the only thing this gentleman deals in. So to be honest, I don't have much more to say about his writing abilities or the man himself.
Well, when he accused you of making $10,000 off of DATV, which we know, first of all, is not an accurate number. It might be close to that, but it's not an accurate number. And that, you landed this job because of your position on the board. Can you tell us a little bit about that, of how that come about?
So one of the main reasons I want to be on the board of directors is because I knew that they had always been talking about, hey, we've been in these studios, which was next door, the previous studios. We've been in those for the last I think 10 years, and they've been always talking about looking for a new spot for a studio. And I thought, well, my expertise as an architect in planning could be beneficial there. We looked at, I think, 5 or 6 different sites, and I sketched up plans for each one of them with 2 studios, and it takes time.
So what Janest alleges is that you made a lot of money off this.
Well,
A studio like this would have had an architectural fee of probably in $80,000 to $90,000.
80 to 90,000. Typically, for something this complex, would be about 10%.
And you got a fee that covered your expenses through your office expenses. Am I correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so that amounted to about $9,500. But then you went into your pocket and had a interior designer. You paid.
I did.
Out of that
Yeah,
stipend that you got.
the board of I argued that there should be an interior designer, and some of the board members thought, well, we can pick our own paint colors, and they didn't understand the full role of an interior designer.
Of course, there's haters out there that
Yeah.
want to paint you wrong. But
Yeah.
isn't there a article in the bylaws of DATV that allows for that to happen?
That's true. As a matter of fact, when we had selected the location that we're in now, I was essentially asked by the board if I would be the architect for the whole project. So I was asked by DATV. I certainly didn't offer it. And when I said yes, and they said, you have to give us a proposal for a fee because you can't do it for free.
Right.
And so I gave a proposal, essentially donating all of my time. I just wanted to make sure that the time being covered for my draftsmen and some of the particulars, printing and insurances and stuff like that. You can imagine those costs, overhead costs are fairly high. So I wanted to make sure that those got covered, so I wasn't essentially pulling $9,500 out of my pocket.
The whole thing is the board at the time, who Mr. Janess supported, by the way, those members of the board who are no longer on the board, that board at the time voted to do it.
Unanimously. Unanimously voted.
Unanimously.
Yes,
And
voted.
now there's one former member that's kicking you around too, but that's okay.
And I had said prior to them even taking on, I said, if I'm architect, I'm recusing myself of all voting, dealing with the construction of the project itself. I will only serve in that regard as your architect.
But Allison Janess hides behind her husband, who's the mad dog, attack dog for several candidates in the race for a selectman, which we'll get into at another time.
So, I mean, just to that same point, they act like they just discovered this.
Yeah.
And it's, as far as I'm concerned, it was the worst kept secret in Dracut because I'm very proud of the work that we've done here at DATV, very proud of the design work that my firm did. And I've been promoting it. I mean, it's just wonderful. It's how often does any architect get to design a television studio?
All right.
So I mean, opening day when we were cutting the ribbon, we had Barry Feingold and I believe
Laurie Trahan.
Laurie Trahan was here, and I mean,
Well,
as I said,
don't wanna
worst
get-
kept secret.
Yeah, too far over. There's one more thing I wanted to, you know what malice is?
Yep.
When somebody is perpetuating a lie when they know it's a lie, and they know that it's not true. Were you ousted from the board of directors here?
Absolutely not. I mean, as you know, I served for 3+ years, and after the contract had been essentially finalized and it was about to get signed by the town and DATV, I wanted to step back and kind of, let somebody else take over.
So, folks, that will pretty much end your
That's
interview.
it?
We want to let you now look into the camera and ask the people for your vote in May 7th, and you're welcome to come back anytime that you want to promote your candidacy.
Thank you. Again, my name is Phil Thibault. I have a long service history for the town of Dracut, volunteering a lot of time and effort, and certainly I would like to continue that in the role of Dracut Selectman. So I ask for your vote on May 7th, for one of your votes for Dracut Selectman. I also do have a function coming up, April 19th, which is a Tuesday, 2 weeks from yesterday, although when we go into repeats. But April 19th at 6 o'clock at Owen and Ollie's. I would love to see you there and get to talk with you and answer any questions I can.
Thanks again for
Thank
coming
you.
in tonight,
Thank you.
Phil. We
Thanks,
wish
Phil.
you luck.
Absolutely.
And I'll be on vacation the 19th, but I'll be there spirit.
That was it.
All right?
Wonderful.
Now we're going to have a minute from Richard Silvio, and 5 minutes. We're going to talk about what's this segment?
So,
Of what's cooking Dracut?
Of what's cooking Dracut. Well, according to some people, I have an unhealthy obsession with the 1930s and 40s. I guess, supporting good, strong American values is unhealthy.
Yeah.
So we're going to take a look at a cooking segment I did on my cooking show, Richard Wartime Recipes, that we're using here as a What's Cooking Dracut episode,
Okay.
where I made some peanut brittle. It was a lot of fun, very easy to make, so why don't we take a look?
Though the memories are fading of those days so long ago now, when skies were turning gray, let's not forget how together we blew away the clouds to let the sun shine through.
Hello, friends, and welcome to Richard's Wartime Recipes. I'm Richard Silvio, and today we're going to be making homemade peanut brittle. This recipe comes from the Victory Cookbook, as seen here on our table. This cookbook came out in 1942, and it's currently on loan from the Dracut Historical Society. Now I get to take it out because I'm special. Unfortunately, you don't. So feel free to come on down, though, on Sundays, 1 to 3, and take a look through it and take some pictures of recipes you may like. So for this peanut brittle, as I mentioned, we only have 2 real ingredients. We have 16 ounces of any light salted peanuts. This is 13 ounces. I didn't have quite enough, but we'll make it work, as they did with shortages back in 1942. And we also have 2 cups of granulated sugar, right? So first thing that we're going to do is we are going to chop up these peanuts. Don't mind me. Now, before we transfer the peanuts to the pan, we have to butter down the pan. I forgot to mention earlier. So I'm just going to get a stick of butter. You could also use Pam or margarine or shortening, but I prefer to use butter because I'm a little tubby boy. Let's see. Let's load up that wonderful, delicious butter. So our next step, of course, is to transfer the peanuts to the pan. Let's get these over. Now, down at the Historical Society, by the way, we also have some ration cookbooks. I'm sorry, ration books in general with the stamps, so those are pretty cool to check out. We also have, actually, while I'm on the subject, annual town reports from the year 1900 all the way to modern day. So if you need any of those, feel free to come on down and get a copy for free. All right, here are the peanuts. Those are all set. So now we're going to move on to the sugar. So you take your 2 cups. Well, first you turn on the stove, or the oven rather, range, whatever you want to call it. Like I said, I'm not a chef, guys. So now you're going to take the 2 cups of granulated sugar and you're going to put it right into the pan. So now we're going to come over here to the pan and we are going to stir this 2 cups of sugar. Now you have to stir it non-stop. You have to stir consistently. At home last night it took me about, I don't know, maybe 10 minutes of non-stop stirring. Just going to get this going. Now what we're really looking for here is for the sugar. The sugar is going to become really a syrup because of the heat. Now we're looking for it to become a nice amber, light brown type of color. So we're just going to keep stirring until we start to see that happen. As you can see, the sugar's getting far more syrupy now, almost done. So while this is going, I'm going to quickly step away and shove the peanuts into a warm oven. Turn this off. I'll just move it over actually. And now I'm going to take the peanuts out of the oven. Nice and toasty. And we're going to put those right here. All right, make sure they're nice and even. Ooh, hot. Now we're going to take the sugar, and we're going to drizzle it right over. Ooh, yummy, yummy. Look at that. Would you look at that? Let's get it all out. Now we're just going to spread this around. Make sure all the peanuts get some sugar on them. Yeah, can you imagine your whole life you've been eating peanut brittle, and if you didn't know, all it is, literally, is sugar with peanuts on top of them. So I just simply snap off pieces and throw them on the plate. Let's enjoy this nice presentation. That is homemade peanut brittle, according to our 1942, the Victory Cookbook. Now, as I showed you, if I can do it, I'm sure you can too. So try it out. Let us know if it came out well. And until next time, I'm Richard Silvio. So long, folks.
Though the memories are fading of those days so long ago now, when skies were turning gray, let's not forget how together we blew away the clouds to let the sun shine through.
I don't know about you, Gordy, but my mouth is watering, and we don't have any peanut brittle here.
You know what, John?
What the hell kind of a guy is this?
Wow.
Huh?
You know
Right?
what, John? Hey, did Phil bring in a sample of his soup when he made his cooking show?
Well, he got lambasted too.
You know what? I made that, was that a week ago? I think that was a week ago for the last show.
Yeah.
And things came up. What can I say?
Well,
I got a little busy.
Okay.
Got a little hungry. He
They-
ate it himself.
No, all down here at the studio, they ripped it apart in 2 seconds, all right? If you...
All right. we
I'll
got a
make some
couple
more
of
for the next show.
some for us next time. Now, listen, there was a question, a caller called into the station here and asked, what does Josh Taylor do for a living, for work? And I believe that he's a contractor. He does a lot of contract work and currently is working for a local contractor as a coordinator for their job sites, I believe. So he's been around quite a bit. He's got heavy equipment. He does a lot of different stuff. So yeah, that's what he does. And Kevin Telly had a question about have to dance around this. Sounds a little fishy. I don't know what he's talking about at this particular time. He might be talking about the stuff with the Genest, but nothing's fishy about it. It's all up above board, and if you want to clarify that, you're welcome to. So the next thing we're going to talk about here, because we're running out of time already, right?
Oh, wow. Jeez.
Oh, yeah, already 23 minutes, is we've got a video piece that we put together of the open mic incident that occurred last meeting for the Board of Selectmen, and then we're going to discuss that. So, Nate, can you show that?
We eliminate trailers completely.
Have you ever gotten a complaint? That's what I
We
mean.
haven't got anything.
Me neither. My mom said it was not a visit.
But that would solve a lot of the voting issues.
He's gonna come on and document.
Because they do, I've been down there, they just packed it.
Yeah. Yeah, we're not going to incorporate his stuff.
So what was that Joe DeRocco said?
We're not going to incorporate his stuff.
Meaning the person who had spoken earlier was Brian Martin. And he spoke about, you know, because he lives in the neighborhood of that particular, what is it, Shoreline?
Yeah.
And they're seeking a liquor license. And he asked quite simply, what, you know, can you incorporate some of the things that the neighborhood might agree with the owner on different stipulations to the liquor license? And of course, Jesse speaks up and says, well, we don't put stipulations on liquor license, which is totally false. I mean, I served on that board 9 years, and there were always some kind of stipulations put
There was
there.
a stipulation, I remember, the one I can remember is when Hannaford's requested the liquor license, and Joe wanted all kinds of stipulations
Right.
put on that before they got the liquor
Right.
license.
So that's not stipulations, right?
Right, right.
Because Brian Martin happens to be a figure in town, and some people are opposed to him, mainly some of Joe and Jesse's friends, and that's when the open mic incident came about, and I think it's pretty telling, and it's something we should be talking more to candidates about, and we have, about the fact that, how do you feel about community input? I mean, Phil alluded and enlightened us a little bit about that he thinks that community involvement has to be more involved, more accepting on the boards, both boards. You have community input where there's no give and take. What do you think about that, Gordy?
I think, I don't agree with the way it works now where, I mean, I like that they can come up for 5 minutes and speak about any topic, but there's no back and forth.
Right.
That's the part, and I would take issue with that if I was on the board. I would at least respond to the person, because if they took their time to come out and then speak in front of the board, I would say, look, I heard you. All you have to say is simply, Speaker, I heard what you said, and I'm going to check into it, and we'll get back to you. I'll make sure someone gets back to you with an email or a follow-up. That's all you have to say.
Yeah, exactly.
You don't have to go into to get into it, but just to recognize that you heard what they said, and you'll get back to them with an answer.
Yeah. So, Richard, you've reached out to Matt Sheehan a couple times
Yes.
to get him on the show, and his response was what the first time?
So the first time I reached out to him was to come on the show live, and he said that he had a previous engagement for this evening. Wonder what that could be. And then I responded to him saying, you know, we're more than happy to tape a segment like we did for Josh Taylor, and I never received a response. So,
And
Not surprising.
You've also reached out to several school committee members, and all the school committee candidates
Yes.
have responded and have come in,
that's correct.
right?
That's correct.
In fact, we're going to have a round table with the school committee, hopefully, school committee candidates, hopefully next show, which
Yes.
will be next Wednesday. You're going to reach out to them, so we'll set up a time. It'll be the same time as we start here, and we'll
Yes.
have a round table discussion and put everybody in here. And
Right. And then I would also like to mention I reached out to Jennifer Kopczynski,
Yep.
the other candidate running for selectman, and I never received a response from her either. So
Oh, I
It's a
did
little
reach out to her.
disappointing. Yeah.
I reached out to her several times. She didn't respond
Mm-hmm.
quickly, but I understand busy lives. We
Yeah.
all do things.
Right.
But I have also offered her to videotape our audio, pre-record a segment, and she said that she can't make it during the day because she works full-time. And then I said, well, we can tape it at night. And I have not heard back from her. But I have a feeling that Angel had alluded to two lucky candidates. And the two lucky candidates are, I suspect, are Matt Sheehan And I believe that the second one is a Lucky / Janest candidate and Jennifer Kopczynski. Now, she's welcome to come in. I have never met the woman. I've never spoken to her other than through Facebook messaging, and I'm willing to sit down and talk to her if she wants to come on the show, and we can get some of the subjects of people that are talking about on the street out in the open. Are you a candidate because of the Janests?
Right.
I mean, it pretty much looks like Allison Janest had Allison loves Dracut, and now you have Jen loves Dracut. So it looks like a pretty innovative and, what do you call it, thinking outside of the box campaign manager. One Republican committee man thinks that, he's Mr. World when it comes to politics. And he's the hit man. I think he's behind that candidacy.
Well,
and I'd love to hear from her that it's not.
Well, I've met her and her husband. I know her daughter from school. Very nice girl. And the parents, Jennifer and her husband, very nice people. We met at the Dracut Takes Action Committee, the pro-choice masker parents back in August when that first started up. We attended some of the meetings and were there together. And she was a very nice woman. I certainly have nothing against her, and I would love for her to come on the show. I think that'd be great exposure for her, and it would give her a chance to clear up some of the allegations against her.
So we're looking forward to it, and if you want, we can do it next time, or we can do it on the show after that before the election comes up. And the election is on Saturday, May 7th, for everybody. Put that in your calendar. I want to get back to Matt Sheehan for a minute because I have a Facebook post. And I know that we haven't got it ready for today, but I'll have it at the next time we meet to show if this is really somebody you want to be your selectman, a person who would make fun of a homeless person on a Facebook post. And it's disgusting, and I think that's something that has to be exposed. So we'll take care of that at the next time we meet. There's two candidates for the 2 seats on the library trustees. Do you know who they are?
I most certainly do not.
You do not. You got to get up on this politics. Do you know who they are?
It's Paquette and Nolan.
You got it. See? Gordy did his homework. And Gordy's been under the gun or under the knife for the last couple of weeks.
I'm sorry, John, that the library, well, you have to admit, the library trustees isn't exactly the most hot button seat available.
It is when you're in politics in Dracut. And we also have 2 candidates for moderator, which we'd love to have them come in. If they'd like to come in, they can reach out to us, and we'll sit down and have a couple of minutes to sit and talk about the moderator's position and who wants to vote for who, right? There is an allegation out there that the candidate for re-election, who's George Meliaris, the incumbent, the committee that's holding the debate for the candidates, I guess it's Dracut candidates?
Dracut Candidates Committee, something like that.
Yeah, like that. So somewhere along the line, I got a Facebook message or something from somebody that says that the head of that committee was appointed by the moderator.
Really?
To some board in the town. I haven't really had the time to get into that yet. But if that's true, we want to bring that out.
That's the same committee that hosted the forum last time, correct?
Yeah.
Because I had requested to be there on behalf of What's Happening Dracut as an amateur journalist, and they denied my request.
Well, you can go. It's a public meeting in a public building. You can go, and you could videotape it. I mean, come on. It's a public meeting. I mean, you can't deny. We are in America, aren't we?
Yes.
I think so. I don't know. Every day it gets a little more clouded. I don't know.
I know that the Board of Selectmen is doing everything in their power to limit the amount of public input and public participation by people, asking for resumes to be on boards so that they can, doctor up whatever resumes they need to make somebody qualified that's on their team, to put them in a particular, board or whatever, so they have control, although they can't figure out who's on what boards anymore because there's not enough people to fill these boards because people don't want to get involved for obvious reasons. So we went through that. We talked about the hit piece. Oh, free speech stops at the public the line, Dracut line. Do you know that, Gordy?
No, I
free
did not.
speech. Unless you agree with a certain group, your free speech is limited. You know how they want to stop our free speech here on What's Happening Dracut, and we'll fight that tooth and nail. Trust me.
There's a guy out there on, he has a Facebook page, a YouTube page, that he goes into public offices and he tries to do a FOIA request and he gets denied. He hears people complain and say, I can't get in to do this because they want my ID. They need to see your ID before you enter the building.
Oh.
So you can see him. He's up. He posts all these on Facebook, and he tries to get in, and he gets denied. Gets arrested. They don't allow him, and then he asks for the manager. The manager keeps going up, and then usually a lieutenant comes in and says, "You have to allow him in."
Yeah.
Why did you detain this person?
Yeah.
So it's pretty interesting. So
Yeah,
I think
you
that's
have
where
to-
we're headed. They're going to ask for IDs.
Well, they
and
want
they're going to
to ask for IDs. They want to ask for the expense of putting the FOIA together.
Yeah.
And all this stuff, which is reasonable to a point. If you're asking for 20 hours worth of work,
then you have
that's
to pay.
that's a little bit different than asking for a piece of paper that can be emailed to a person with the flick of a button,
Right, correct.
or a push of a button on your computer, right?
Yep.
So they're just trying to stymie people from asking questions and getting answers because they want to control the flow of information. And unfortunately, we see a real trend of that in our country. Our country overall is having a big trend on that stuff, and it's got to stop. Somewhere it's got to end. It really has to end. So let's talk a little bit about Dracut politics. Other than Dracut politics, I mean, let's talk about the
National politics.
Still Dracut news. Yeah. The firefighter Justin George has a huge lawsuit against the city, against the town, and it names the former manager, former fire chief, and the former director of personnel. And they're all formers now. I wonder why. They're all gone. But the town's going to pay a heavy price for what they did to Justin George. And recently, a judge ruled in the case. You know how preliminarily to when the trial actually begins, there's rulings on different evidence, there's rulings on different things. And one of the rulings was asked about whether or not the individuals will be held responsible financially, liable.
Wow, interesting. Rather
and
than
the judge ruled that they will.
Wow.
So
interesting.
That is huge for Justin and huge. If I was one of those public officials, I'd be pretty nervous right now that we're being sued for this stuff that they did.
Well, if they would have done the right thing in the first place, they wouldn't have been in this position.
Right. But it's just another step where they think that they can get away with this.
Bully somebody?
Bullying. It's the same thing as trying to say, you're not going to get the information because you're just a taxpayer.
Yeah.
Get out of here. You don't need to get information from us. You only pay the tax. Just pay the bill and shut up.
Yeah.
Right? Right, Richard? Just pay that tax bill and keep your mouth shut.
It's ridiculous.
And you only do what we want you to do, right?
It's ridiculous.
So I think former manager Jim Duggan, former police chief Dave Brulette, and former personnel director Lindberg have got a little bit of a headache coming down the
How about the fire chief? Isn't he?
The fire chief is Briette.
Brulette. Okay.
Briette, yeah. So they're going to have a little bit of a headache coming down the pike very soon. So we got about 10 minutes left. Did you hear about the peeping Tom?
Yes.
I did.
It was all over the news.
Now, if a certain computer expert had his computer here, we could pull up the story. But that I posted on Facebook. You can talk about that anytime. You can go look at it on Facebook on our Facebook page.
But kudos to the people in the neighborhood that saw the guy was out there. He ran away.
They set up cameras.
She set up a camera on his truck. When he came back, she called the police that he just took off.
The one thing, though, that was disturbing is that a neighbor followed him. And that could get a little hairy,
be careful
I think.
with that.
I'd be very careful with that. You don't want to get yourself trapped in an area where this guy could come out and lash out at you. But I guess she followed him long enough to call the police, and then the police came.
And then he said he was selling marijuana.
He's selling marijuana.
Of all the excuses.
But, I mean, isn't that still illegal to sell marijuana?
Yes.
I mean,
he doesn't have a license. Yeah, he doesn't have a license.
He doesn't have a license to do that
in
Massachusetts. But it's interesting. So I have a picture to show. Nate, can you put up that picture about the bathroom? So I happened to be at Dillimack and Espy today, and this is a sign I saw down at Dillimack and Espy Park. This is the bathroom area.
Yes.
And you read what that sign says?
Bathrooms closed due to vandalism.
Due to vandalism.
Yeah. Interesting.
So aren't there cameras down there to be able to see who might have created the vandalism?
I would certainly hope so.
I mean, it just doesn't make sense to me that we would totally close the bathrooms. Now, I believe that the bathrooms at Monahan Park cost almost $800,000 to build.
Right.
So I don't know what these bathrooms, but it's going to be at least $400,000, I'm going to say.
Yeah.
And now the public can't use them.
And I think the Veterans Park is the same. They lock the
It's
bathroom.
ridiculous. Well, I think,
Why do we keep building these bathrooms when the people can't use them?
I think there's a deeper reason for this. What do you think that might be?
Not sure.
Do you have any idea what that might be?
Not sure.
The reason I think that they're not keeping them open, and they use an excuse of vandalism. I know the town has insurance, so the vandalism can be repaired. And I know that it can be a pain in the neck, but you don't give in to the vandals by saying we're not going to use this anymore, and then the majority of the people who pay taxes and have contributed to this can't use it now.
Right.
Right? I think the deeper seed thing is that they have to be cleaned, and the town doesn't want to pay for cleaning them. That's what I think it is. I think it's a weekly thing. They don't have the resources to go have somebody go by there more like daily than it is weekly.
Right, because you got to replace the toilet paper. I'm sure people are going down there stealing the toilet paper out.
But that's, what are we living in? Are we in Venezuela?
I know. But
We're heading that
that
way.
was my point with the whole CPC thing, because I saw this happen. This has happened every year they've opened these up since that thing's been open. And then when they did the one at Monahan Park across from the fire station, you knew the same thing was coming. But now they got smart and they just locked them and only open them when there's a softball game. But then why did we build these $850,000 bathrooms in the first place? If they're just not going to be used by the public anyway. So
Maybe it would be easier,
don't
John, if we put in some of that Czechoslovakian toilet paper you were telling me
The one
about.
that feels like
some of that
sandpaper.
I bet nobody would be
You
rushing to
remember
steal that.
You
Absolutely.
remember
How could you
that.
forget that? How could you forget?
All right, so what do you think? Let us know what you think about the playgrounds and the parks bathrooms being closed, and we'll try to get more information. We'll put our cub reporter on. Why are these really closed?
Sending me to bathroom.
Why are they really closed?
Oh, boy.
You're going to have bathroom duty. What do you think of Ron DeSantis and the bill that was passed recently, and he signed, that the Democrats have said it's Don't Say Gay bill? Have you read about that?
yes, I've read about it.
And what do you think about it?
Well, there's the word gay doesn't appear in the bill at all.
It's amazing how they spin things.
Yep, they spin. I think the big one was the one that was just happened this afternoon. I don't know if you saw it.
What's that?
The governor of Texas
Yes.
just signed into law that all the immigrants coming in will now be put into a bus and sent up to Washington, D.C.
Huge. I love that.
I love it.
I love that. And what's his name down in
The governor of Texas.
The governor of Texas.
I can't remember his name.
I can't remember his name, but he's running for re-election, and I think he just beat the Republican challenger.
That was that's brilliant.
Not Abbott, right?
Abbott.
Abbott.
Greg Abbott.
Yeah, Greg
exactly. You're good. See,
I
national
try,
politics.
I try.
You're pretty good on national politics. So let's talk a little bit about Hunter Biden providing 10% of his China and Russian, Ukrainian money to the big guy. And who's been exposed as the big guy?
Well, I don't know. Jen Psaki says it's not Joe Biden, so it can't be.
Oh.
If Jen Psaki says it can't be him, then it can't be him. I don't know.
Well, yeah.
I don't know. That threw me off.
There is a grand jury in session in Washington, a federal grand jury, and there is a particular witness that's been before them and has said that the big guy is Joe Biden.
Yep. And
Who else could it be?
The problem is though, if this goes forward with our Justice Department, I think it's going to still get swept under the rug. They need to have an independent commission come in.
Unfortunately, our media is all bought and sold for by the Democrats. Most of them, I mean, if you talk to a Democrat, they'll say, you must watch Fox TV, right? And like there's nothing else other than Fox out there. You don't have to watch Fox. How about the New York Times now starting to say, oh, the Hunter Biden story is probably right. I mean, the laptop is true, right?
Right.
But when Donald Trump said it, oh, he's nuts. It's
Russian disinformation.
That's Russian disinformation. I heard it today. A Democrat announcer talking that, somebody asked them, well, if Trump was president, we wouldn't be in Ukraine right now. We wouldn't have a problem with Ukraine. And they said, well, because Trump has such a cozy relationship with Vladimir Putin. Are you serious?
That's ridiculous.
You turn that complete. What cozy relationship does he have with Vladimir Putin?
I think honestly, if Trump was in office still, he would have said, "I'm going to give Putin 72 hours to get out.
Oh, absolutely.
If he's not out, we're getting involved."
Well, he wouldn't have. Putin would have never did it.
No, in
because
the first place,
Putin
right? He
and
was afraid.
Kim
He
Jong-un
knows.
and all those guys say, that man Trump is crazier than
than
me.
me, right?
Absolutely.
And that was a good thing.
And that's how he wanted it.
Well,
Exactly.
You know who's crazier than Trump? Somebody with some Trump derangement syndrome.
Oh
in the
yeah,
Facebook chat. I won't say his name.
Don't even say his name because you know
I
what?
won't- but I think his comment is worth it.
he just couldn't. We couldn't.
Sure. Let's put Trump in prison first, then we'll work on Biden. I guess loving America is a crime now. It's a federal crime.
There's not been a bigger investigation and more orifices of any family checked out than the Trump family, and they still have come up with zero. Zero. It's all make-believe. It's all trumped up stuff. See what I just did? See what I just did? Are the Democrats in for a tsunami of losses in the midterm
Red
elections?
wave. Here it comes.
And there's a big one, huge one in California. Independent is running for governor. So, and I've heard that he's got a lot of backing.
Who's that?
So, he's running against Gavin Newsom. I can't remember his name, but he's an independent.
Okay, right.
And they just released today. They released a guy that went into a department store with an automatic gun and shot 6 people. He was in prison for 10 years, and they released him after 4.
So the refugees from Ukraine are now flooding into Poland.
Yeah.
Did you see today that Poland put out a guideline to war of how you should behave during a war? Wow. You'll have to look that up. That's also on our Facebook page.
God bless
you
Poland.
Could look at
really.
Poland they're really nervous about what Vladimir Putin is going to do. And today, General Milley also came out and said that the federal government military are going to propose new, camps or whatever, military bases in Poland, in Poland and some of those Baltic states to try to stymie some of the aggression that is sure to come in the future. Biden's now asking Venezuela and Saudi Arabia to increase the oil when we have millions of gallons of oil here in the United States. Drill, baby, drill. Drill, baby, drill.
Well,
we were independent.
He has to undo his first day in office where he put in the regulations to ban the oil drilling.
And how do you feel about Joe Biden telling the United States of America that the supply chain is real and prices are definitely going to go up?
Well, they are.
How can the Democrat Party survive the oncoming tsunami that they're going to have?
They're not going to. So that's simple.
It's going to be incredible. The enthusiasm rate on Republicans is high, and the enthusiasm rate for Democrat voters is low. We've already come to the end of the show, Gordy.
Wow.
Yep.
We're going to let you close us out.
Sure. Just one thing I'm going to say quickly before we close is that this Dracut political season coming up May 7th is going to be huge. I don't even know who to vote for yet on the school committee. I think there's a lot of good candidates out there, so I still haven't made up my mind yet.
There are some, but there are candidates that are in there that are in for one reason.
Right, but I'm just saying this is one of the most, I think, heated ones that we'll have in some time. So stay tuned. That's why you want to watch this show. Stay tuned. We're going to give you all the information, bring you all the candidates, try to give you the most information that you need to make a good vote and get the right people that you want into office. So when it's Wednesday and it's 6:30, it's What's Happening Dracut. Good night, Dracut. Glad
So
to
long,
be back.
folks.